Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated on providing you the how-tos of marketing and networking strategies. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of the week of Networking with Michelle. I'm your host, Michelle Gomez. Hey, let me know, are you feeling these 2 episodes a week? Would prefer 1 episode a week? Let me know. At the end of the day, I want to make sure I am providing nothing but value to you, takeaways that you're able to implement, whether it's your personal business. I just want you to be able to implement the value that I or my guests bring to you each and every week. All right. So with that being said, this week we have Dre Baldwin. Dre is a coach and a motivational speaker. He focuses on mindset, discipline, confidence, and exposure. And this guy has a great story. He talks about how he wasn't able to play ball to playing professional ball, like within 5 years. And the things that this man's work ethic is crazy. Okay. And we talk about that. We talk about the mental toughness, work ethic. How do you build your confidence? One thing that I know is really, really popular in my 20s and 30s, even when you start transitioning, do you fake it till you make it? Hear what he has to say about that, as well as the importance of building a personal brand. All right, so before we get into this interview, I do want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Line 25 Consulting. Line 25 is all about empowering entrepreneurs to develop their personal brand by leveraging relationships and expertise. So visit line25consulting.com. So without further ado, Dre Baldwin. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Networking with Michelle. Today's special guest is Dre Baldwin, aka Dre All Day. He is a former professional basketball player turned mental toughness expert. So we're going to talk about everything from discipline, connecting with people, and how to be successful. Dre, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing excellent. How are you doing?
Good. So I am fascinated by your story. So why don't you go ahead and tell the people about, how'd you come up into this?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you the medium-sized version of my story. My background coming from the city of Philadelphia, I was always into sports. And coming from the city, anyone who is also from there, that there's not a lot of grass always available. So we played football in the driveways and in the street. We played basketball on somebody's driveway basketball court. Eventually, as I got older, we played a little kickball too. As I got older, started going to the playgrounds. The first sport that I liked to play was football because I thought I was pretty fast. I was taller than most kids. So I played a little bit of football, but then my parents told me the day that the coaches told us that we need to start bringing our equipment to practice, my parents said, listen, we can't really afford we can't spend that type of money to get you football equipment. So the next sport I went and played was baseball because growing up, my first favorite athlete was this guy named Deion Sanders. And he played football and baseball. So I said, okay, if I can't be Deion in football, then I'll be Deion in baseball. So I went and played baseball for a few years until I realized I didn't really have any talent for playing baseball. It wasn't working out. I couldn't hit a baseball. I couldn't hit a curveball, fastball, changeup. I couldn't hit anything. So I walked away from baseball and walked over to the basketball court, which is where all the kids in my neighborhood, a majority of them never even played the other sports. They just went straight into basketball because that's just what people do in the neighborhoods that I come from. Nobody played tennis. They didn't even cut the grass at the football field and the baseball field. So everybody was playing basketball. And I was 14 when I first started playing. Now, many kids, if you think about a kid who's going to go on to play pro ball or even college basketball, they're starting to play basketball at age 7, age 8, maybe age 5. I was starting at age 14. So a lot of kids my age, male and female, were a lot better than me, more advanced than me. I had a ton more experience than me. So I really sucked at basketball when I first started playing. But being that I love sports, I just figured, why don't I just practice here, play a little bit and see what happens. And one thing that I stumbled upon was this. In my neighborhood, I come from Philadelphia. So in the summer times, it gets really hot, 100 degrees in the middle of the day on that asphalt. So nobody really comes outside in the afternoons. Everyone comes out around 5, 6 o'clock. And a lot of these were grown men. So maybe they were at work during the day. I wasn't because I'm a teenager. I've figured to myself, I'm going to be out here in the evenings when everybody else is out here, of course, because that's when all my friends are out. We get to play in our pickup games. But what if I come out to the park during the day? What if I come out here around 10 o'clock and just practice my dribbling, shooting, try to figure out how to play basketball? Because I had no mentors. I had no coach. My parents aren't athletes. My sister's not an athlete. No one took any interest in me because I didn't have any talent. I was not this precocious player that you could see he was going to be a star. So nobody was teaching me. I said, why don't I just come out here from, let's say, 10 o'clock to around maybe 3 o'clock every single day and practice when no one else is around? And maybe I'll start to slowly catch up to everyone else since I get this extra couple hours every day. Now, mind you, looking back on it, that sounds like a perfect formula. Seems obvious, but back then it's not like it just happened overnight. This took years and years of practicing and trial and error. I know they say trial and error, but I had trial with about 3, 4, 5 errors between each trial. I eventually started to get better, slowly started to catch up. And I'm in high school at this point. So I tried out for the varsity basketball team in my school. And I'm in the Philadelphia school district, was an underfunded district. So our basketball team had no JV. So you either made varsity or you didn't play. And the basketball team didn't even have an assistant coach. It was just one guy who coached the team, no assistants, this really tiny gym. I tried out in 9th grade, didn't make it. I tried out 10th grade, didn't make it. Now going into my junior year, 11th grade, I had grown a little bit. I was a little bit more athletic and I could finally dunk a basketball. If I got a little bit of a running start, I could dunk the ball. So I'm figuring heading into my junior year tryouts, all I got to do is get a dunk. If I dunk in tryouts, everybody's going to notice me because in high school, if one player comes, if you can dunk in high school, you get a lot of attention just because you can dunk. You might not have any other skill. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to just get this dunk and I'm going to make the team. And the second guy who became my favorite athlete of all time is this guy named Michael Jordan. Now, I knew Michael Jordan's story. For those who don't know, is that Michael Jordan didn't make his varsity basketball team until he was a junior. So I'm figuring, okay, I'm still on track to be the greatest basketball player of all time. All I had to do is get a dunk in these tryouts, and I'm on the Michael Jordan track. I can go average 25 points this year, 30 points next year, get a scholarship, and before you know it, I'll be giving my Hall of Fame induction speech. So I go to tryouts my junior year, and I get completely destroyed by this kid who was in 12th grade. He was about my height, but he was way stronger than me, physically stronger than me. So for those who don't even play basketball, let's just say he was so strong that he got close to the basket and I couldn't move him away from it. And even though he wasn't that talented, he was just scoring because he was so close to the basket and I couldn't keep him away from it. So he scored on me 5, 6, 7 times in a row in front of the coaches, in front of the players, in front of all the girls. Long story short, I didn't make the basketball team as a junior. That week after I didn't make the team, I figured I had to reconstruct where I was going in life, because up to that point, I had always been doing this thing that I didn't know what it was. Nobody had taught it to me, where I would just have a picture in my mind of what I was going to do, what my success was going to look like, how I was going to make all these great things happen. And we all know it now as visualization, but I didn't know what it was back then. I could not have explained it, but I had always visualized myself being a basketball player. But when I didn't make it as a junior, I said, okay, the writing's on the wall. This is not going to work. So let me start figuring out what else I can do. So maybe I can be a rapper. So I tried that. No, that didn't work. That didn't last long. Maybe I can be a really good student. Maybe I can be, I was drawing a blank. And all the visions kept coming back to playing basketball. So I decided to give basketball one more shot. I played on a local team as a junior, finally made it as a senior, and I set the world on fire by averaging 2 points a game as a senior in high school on the basketball team. I was sitting on the end of the bench as a senior. So still at this point, graduating high school, people will look at me, any reasonable, logical person, even if you didn't know me, you would say, okay, you had your run in basketball, you made the team as a senior, congratulations. Now figure out what you're actually going to do with life. It's time to get serious now, because this basketball thing is pretty much done. It's obvious. I mean, look at the facts in front of you. But I decided that I would at least try to walk on in college. I went to a school that was 4 years academically, but 2 years athletically. You could only play a sport for 2 years. I walked on, played as a freshman, made the team, played okay. Wasn't a superstar, but I played okay. And that summer was a pivotal moment in my life when, now that my brand is called Work On Your Game, I say it all the time, is when it really came to life. Because that summer, after my freshman year, so it was in between my freshman and sophomore year, I went to the school called Penn State Abington, which is right outside of Philadelphia. It was a commuter campus, had no on-campus housing, so I lived at home as a freshman. And I would go to the campus every single day in the summertime just to work on my basketball game, because obviously it's a gym on campus. And then the summer, anyone who's been on a college campus in the summer knows it's pretty empty. So I would go to the gym every day and just practice by myself. One particular morning, I went to the campus and I was about to go to the gym and practice, but I hadn't eaten breakfast. So I decided to walk across the campus, and this campus is small, only has about 4 buildings. I walk across the campus to the cafeteria. I walk in the building. It was a bunch of people who looked like teachers, or I don't know what they were, sitting in the lobby. I know they weren't from our campus because our campus was so small. I know I didn't know most of these faces. So I just walked past them. I didn't know anybody. I go into the cafeteria to get some food. I'm walking out of the cafeteria, and this black guy just approaches me. And he says, "Hey, man, what position do you play?" And I'm looking at this guy like, okay, I know I don't know this guy. And this is a very small campus. He's a black guy. He's about 6'3". I know all the black faces on this campus, so I know I don't know this dude. And he's asking me what position I play. Mind you, we're in the cafeteria. We're not in the basketball gym. So my mind is going 1,000 different directions. Like, who is this dude? And I said to him, "How do you know that I play anything?" He didn't even say what sport. He just said, "What position do you play?" And he said, "I'm just asking." So I start talking to him. I tell him I play guard, and he introduces himself. Long story short, this guy was the head basketball coach at a different campus at Penn State Altoona, which is an NCAA Division III school. And he recruited me to come play at his school. Now, I came to find out almost 15 years later. I finally asked him, how did you know who I was? What was the whole story behind that? And he said, I wasn't at the campus to find you, Dre. I was at the campus doing something else, but I saw you walk by. And he said, "I'm a coach, so I know what a basketball player looks like. I could tell by the way you carried yourself that you are a basketball player. You looked like the type of player that I knew I needed on my team." And he didn't even know who I was. He didn't know if I could play or not. He just went on off of instinct and recruited me that day. And the reason why that was so pivotal, Michelle, is because I didn't have to be on campus that day. No one was telling me to come to the gym and practice. I was doing it on my own. And that happenstance, or whatever you want to call it, luck, that happened because I was in there putting in the work. And that solidified for me. And mind you, at this time, I'm 19. So I'm 5 years in playing basketball. Finally solidified for me showing up all the time why it matters. Flash forward, I finished college. I start my professional career a year removed from graduating college. End up playing over 9 years, 8 different countries. But my career was not just it wasn't a yellow brick road. Let's put it that way. As anyone knows, if any of you have ever seen that diagram that people use with success, people think success is this straight line going up and to the right, but it's really not. It's all these up and downs and backwards and circles and all this other stuff. That's how my career was. And at one point in my career, I looked at my situation and said, I don't have any control whatsoever right here. I have no control over what's going to happen to me, because I am subject to someone on some basketball team somewhere in the world that I probably never have even been saying, "Okay, Dre, you are worthy of this contract and having a job playing for this basketball team." And I didn't really like that position, because when I was a sophomore in college, I had stumbled into this book that changed my entire mindset when it came to work and business and everything. It was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And when I read that book, it just changed my mindset when it came to work, money, business, everything. And I realized, looking at my career, this was almost 7-8 years later from reading that book, I'm in a position where I don't control anything. I have no power, no influence over what happens to me. So I had to get some control. Now, parallel story happening at the same time around 2006, actually 2005. In order for me to start a pro career, because listening to my background to this point, you may be wondering, how did I come from that, just being this okay college player at a low-level college, to being a pro, was that I had to go to an exposure camp. And for those of you who don't know what an exposure camp is, it's similar to a job fair. But instead of putting on a suit and handing out a resume, you put on your athletic uniform, whatever sport you're playing, and you compete against other people who are also trying to become professionals, in other words, get jobs at that same sport. And then there are a bunch of evaluators, scouts, agents, managers, coaches, who will watch you and decide, hey, who do I like? So I went to one of these exposure camps. This was in Orlando in 2005. I played very well at this camp. Now, the main thing that I wanted from this camp was, number one, a scouting report, which they posted online. But number two, the footage from that camp, which actually showed me playing basketball against other professional level players and doing well. But the thing is, that video was on, I don't know if everyone listening knows, but it was on a VHS tape. I don't think you remember VHS tapes. So I get the VHS transferred to a CD, get that into a digital format. I put that video footage on this new website that I had just heard of called youtube.com. This was in 2006. I put the video there just for safekeeping because I didn't want to try to track a VHS for the rest of my life. That footage was the first video I ever put on YouTube, was the first of 5,000 videos that I have, 5,000 plus I have now. And going back to my other story, around 2009, I decided I need some more power over what I was doing with my life. I asked myself a really, really good question. I said, what can I do to where I will have some control over my outcomes, control over my life, but still do the things that I actually love doing, which is playing basketball, going to the gym. I love being on the internet. How can I combine those two things? Now, that question led to what a lot of people know from me now, which is the brand of Dre All Day, which, mind you, in 2009, nobody was saying build a brand or personal brand. That didn't exist unless you were a well-known, a big company with a big marketing budget, but a person couldn't be a brand back then. So that's when I started doing what became building a brand, writing more, blogging, YouTubing, and then flash forward to today. That's what I've done. Built that brand through publishing a ton of content online, a lot of free content online, a lot of the programs and the talks, and it's still the YouTube and podcasting and everything else. So that's how I got to this point today. And my area of expertise became the same things that I needed to make things happen in basketball. Number one, the mental toughness. You need the mental toughness to keep showing up when things aren't working. The results have not shown up yet, but you keep showing up. That is mental toughness. Number two is the discipline to show up every day and do the work because you know there's a long-term result that you're after. And number three, the confidence. You got to believe in yourself before there's anything in your reality, anything in your physical space that says you're going to be a success. You must believe you can become a success. So those are the three things that I focus on delivering to people these days as a speaker, author, podcaster, blogger, and everything else that I do. So that's my story.
I know even at a young age, I mean, that's what I picked up: mindset, discipline, persistence, vision, confidence. From your youth to adulthood, you've had a lot of transitions. How have you been able to navigate that? And what's been the best way for you to navigate those life transitions as well as advising others?
Number one thing in making a transition, let's just say the athlete to business professional or athlete to entrepreneur transition, is, first of all, identify what you've learned or what skills you've been using or what skills you've picked up in your previous situation that will still be valuable in the next situation. Because I didn't want to go into the business world as a complete rookie, as if I was some 22-year-old coming out of college who didn't know anything. So I said, okay, I've been playing professional sports for almost 10 years. What did I learn playing sports that a person who doesn't play sports but is going to work every day can use? What did I learn? And I said, okay, well, let's say a person who's in sales, they need confidence. You need confidence to show up and believe in your product. You need discipline to do the work every day. You need the mental toughness because there's paperwork you got to file, putting names in the CRM. You don't feel like doing that, but you know you had to do it. That's part of the job. That's something that can apply to anyone. And then when I looked at those areas where I talk about work on your game in business, confidence, discipline, mental toughness, those things all apply to anyone. So the number one thing I would say, Michelle, is identify what you used up to this point that can still apply moving forward, because that's what gives you credibility. That's your collateral walking into the door. And that's the thing that will make people listen to you because, okay, you play professional sports. That's great. But how does that help us? And those are the things that matter. So that's the number one key.
So with that confidence, especially today with the personal branding, social media, especially Instagram and Snapchat, where a lot of people are saying everything is curated, right? We can make everything look good. What's your take on the whole fake it till you make it versus just waiting your time for your ambition to meet that level of success?
That's a great question. Well, number one, when it comes to the curated content, I don't really curate a lot of my content. I do mine when I do a video, maybe because I've done so many, but I do my videos in one take. They are not heavily edited, and then they go. Something like a Snapchat or an Instagram, I post a picture as I took it right off of my phone, or even a Snapchat is coming this raw and uncut from what I'm doing in the moment. But as far as your question on fake it till you make it, I'm glad you asked about that, because I believe there's no such thing as faking it till you make it. But the reason why there's no such thing is because of this. If someone, let's say you're a 14-year-old who is terrible at basketball, but you believe you can make varsity and be a player and then go play in college and then go play in the pros, you have to, first of all, assume the position that you want to be mentally. You must mentally assume that position. So you're thinking, you can think like, let's just say back in the mid 90s, basketball players wanted to be Michael Jordan, or who was the other, Allen Iverson or Penny Hardaway. Today, maybe Steph Curry, LeBron James, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. You have to assume that mindset before you are that good, because that's the only way you're going to get to being that good. Now, some people may say, okay, that's faking it till you make it. But I say, on the contrary, it's not fake. You're not faking it when you put yourself in a certain frame of mind. When you put yourself in a frame of mind and you're the best player on the floor, that's not fake, because when you go out on the court, you're going to perform as the person you see yourself as. Now, obviously, you need some skill behind that. So this is not something you do right before you walk on the court. This is something you practice. This is something that you build. There's a discipline in practicing as if you're the best player out there. So you have some skill behind it. Then when you get in the game, you'll perform like the best player out there, and you have some skill to actually do so. So you have to put yourself in the frame of mind of being the best before you actually become the best, in order to become the best, because you can't become the best if you have a mindset that says you're average. Even when you are average, if your results say average, but your mindset says average, where are you going to be a year from now? You're still going to be average. Where are you going to be in 5 years? You're still going to be average, because your mindset says I'm average. The only way you're going to get to a superstar level is when you're average. You must see yourself as superstar, and then you must do the work that closes the gap, that eliminates the conflict between your reality and your mindset. The only way to eliminate that conflict is either you get rid of the mindset and just focus on reality, which is what too many people do. That's why so many people stay in the same space in life. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to take this reality, I'm going to augment it and say, my reality is I am this person 10 levels above what I've actually achieved. And then you're going to work your behind off to close that gap. So there's no real such thing as fake it till you make it, because as soon as you start faking it, it becomes real.
Now, I saw your video, and I'm definitely going to have it linked up. But for the listeners, can you explain the concept behind the third day?
Absolutely. Anyone who's listening, I'm sure everyone who's listening has been to a gym, or maybe some of you have hired a personal trainer before. You know exactly what the third day is, and I'll explain it. So the first day, let's just say you joined the gym and you got the training, the intro training package. Maybe you get a month of training or something that comes with it. First day, you're going to this new gym. It's a new you. Maybe it's a new month. Maybe it's a new year. Maybe you just decided something because the doctor told you need to get in shape, or maybe one of your friends got in great shape. You decided you're going to do it. So the first day, you had some new gym shoes, new gym clothes. You're going to a new gym. You got this new membership, new personal trainer. You're ready to do this. You look at yourself in the mirror when you get out of the car in the parking lot, and you're revved up. You're in the zone. You walk in there, the trainer kicks your butt all over the gym because it's your first time doing something like this. You're not really in shape, but it's your first day. It's a new thing for your body. It's a new thing for your mind. You crawl back to the car. You get home. You look yourself in the mirror. You say, I'm definitely going to do this. Second day, your body's a little bit sore, but it's still brand new. I mean, it's like if you got a new car. The first time you drive it is great. The second time it's still pretty great. I mean, it's still a new car. You just got it. So you go to the gym. You have new gym clothes, a new set of gym clothes. You got your new sneakers. It's still brand new. You just got them. Trainer works you out again. He worked the upper body in the first day. You do the lower body the second day. So now your entire body is really sore. You drag yourself home or to the car. You look yourself in the mirror and say, 2 days in a row, I'm building that habit. I read it in the book. I got to keep doing it to build a habit. 30 days or 60 days, whatever it is. I'm doing this. Now the third day, things don't feel so new anymore. The third day, your entire body's sore because the trainer killed you on the first day, upper body. The second day was the lower body. On the third day, it doesn't feel so brand new when you walk into the gym. You don't even want to say hello to the person at the front desk. On the third day, you don't want to hear the trainer yelling in your face. On the third day, you don't want to drink more water because you're not used to drinking all that water. On the third day, you don't want to hear the trainer telling you what you can't eat before you come to the gym again. On the third day, maybe it's raining outside and the trainer says, we still going to run a mile because that's what we dedicated ourselves to doing. The third day is the day where many people either don't show up at all. There are those people who pay for personal training, but then they just don't show up for the session. They just lose the session. Or they show up, but they don't really show up. Any of you who are business professionals, I'm sure if you look around your office or wherever you work, if you work with other people, you see people on those days where they're at work. They're there, but they're not really there. They're not really working. They went through the motions, as an athletic coach would say sometimes. Some players come to practice and just go through the motions. That's what happens on the third day. Now, here's the thing about the third day. Anyone who can make the decision, because it is a decision, it's not about your physical ability or your skill, the decision to show up on the third day against the person who does not show up on the third day, you get yourself just a little tiny bit. It's so small you can't even see it with a what's those things called? A microscope. You couldn't even see it with a magnifying glass, the difference between the person who showed up and the person who didn't on the third day, which is why people get faked out. Because they don't show up on the third day and they say, well, I didn't show up, I'm all right. It's the same way when in 1996, when I'm at the park every day working on my game, people who are way better than me will walk past me on it. They will walk past the park because it's right next to the street. They walk past me on the way to the gym or to go see some girl or to hang on the corner somewhere. And they say, Dre, why are you out there practicing every day? I'm still better than you. And I don't even practice in the middle of the day every day. Why are you out there practicing every day? They didn't understand. Because the difference that I was building on that third day was so small that nobody would notice, not even me. But when you put together another third day and another one and 1,000 third days and 10 years of third days, then the difference is so wide that people don't even realize. People see the difference later on and they don't even realize what the difference was. They think it was this one thing. They think, oh, you went to college. And that's why you got so much good. Oh, well, you had a trainer, or your parents had this, or, oh, it's just because you got taller, Dre. We was both 6 feet and then you grew to 6'4". That's the reason why you got better. Or you got these genes that let you jump high. And that's why no, it was none of that. What it was the discipline to show up on the third day. And the third day, ladies and gentlemen, does not have to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The third day could be every single day for you. The third day could be the day after. Just last night in the building that I live in, the fire alarm went off at 1:30 in the morning. They kept going off for an hour straight. But then the PA announced that it would come on and say there's not a real alarm, it's a false alarm. But for whatever reason, they couldn't turn it off. So it just kept going off and you're just laying in bed trying to sleep. Guess what? You still got to show up the next day. What if I had what if I had to give a keynote speech at 8 o'clock this morning? What if I had to run a marathon this morning? What if I had to interview for a job this morning? I still got to show up because nobody else had an alarm going off. They don't live here. So this showing up on the third day, that small difference added up over time. It's like compound interest, but you can't stop pushing the boulder up the hill. If you stop one day, the boulder rolls back to the bottom and you got to start all over again. So that's what the third day is a mindset.
I love it. I want to pivot a little bit, and I know a lot of people struggle with networking or they're afraid to initiate. Not everyone has a basketball coach coming up to them and be like, hey, what position you play? But how has networking benefited you throughout your career, especially in the entrepreneurship space?
Wow. Networking is everything. Networking is the number one thing I think when I think of the word networking is initiating. I think of initiating. So I don't think of networking as somebody finds out about me and then they say, wow, I saw your YouTube, or I like your website, or I saw you at a TED Talk or something like that. That's not what I think of networking is, even though that obviously can be networking too. I think of it as initiating, meaning taking someone who yesterday did not know who you were, was not aware of your existence, and today they know who you are. And not only do they know who you are, they know what value you can bring to them. Not what value you can bring to everybody else or what you've done in the last 10 years, but what you could do that can help that person today. That's what I see as networking, because it's not about how great you are for yourself. It's about what you can do for other people, because no one will value you just because of what they may value you to a certain point because you did so many great things yourself. But if you can't do anything for me, then I'm not really concerned with that person. So that's what I see as networking, is the value you can bring to other people, and not them finding out about you, but you going and making sure they know about you because you're doing the outreach, you're doing the initiating, you're the one going and saying, hey, my name is this is what I do, and this is how I see it as a way it can help you.
And over the years, how have you managed to build and connect with your audience online?
Wow. Well, the number one thing for me is that I've always been accessible. So when I first started on YouTube, I actually started blogging. I was blogging in 2005 before I even started YouTubing. But even then, with YouTube, when I first started out, I would read and reply to every single comment. And over the last 10 plus years, I've replied to over 1 million comments on YouTube videos alone. I still to this very day read the comments and reply to comments to this very day. And people know they can get in touch with me through the comments. Nowadays, you got Instagram, direct messaging, Twitter. I was just replying to a basketball player on Twitter before we started talking. Snapchat. I do a back and forth on Snapchat. I do live streams on Periscope. So I always make myself accessible to where you can ask me a question and get an answer. And one reason that I do that is not because I want to make myself look like this great guy, is because the questions that people ask me in those interactions are what fuel the ongoing content. So the reason I'm able to, when I did my first TED Talk, I came from the stuff that people would ask me. People would always ask me, I talked about the third day. People would say, Dre, I watch your videos on YouTube when you're practicing your basketball skills. Why are you always the only person in the gym? Why is there never anybody else in the gym? And I explained to them what became this concept of the third day. I didn't even call it that then, but that's what it became, the concept of the third day. And when I talk about confidence, is because athletes always ask me, how do you develop the confidence to perform in the games? I play so great when I'm by myself practicing or when I'm with my friends from my neighborhood, but then I get in the game and there's 100 people in the stands and there's referees and the coaches yelling and there's players on the other team who I never met before. And all of a sudden I can't perform anymore. How do you get that confidence? What is it? Or they say, Dre, you talk about having this confidence and there's no such thing as fake it till you make it. But what if I'm too confident? What if I get arrogant? What if people think I'm full of myself, or they think that I think I'm too good for them? How do I control my confidence and not have too much of it so that people don't think that I'm arrogant? How do you control it? And I talk about that. I answer those questions. So I take the questions that I hear over and over and over again by being fully engaged with my audience. And that fuels the content. That can fuel everything. That can fuel a keynote speech if you're a speaker. It can fuel your podcast if you do podcasting, or if you want to write a book. All of that stuff comes from the questions that people are asking you. Because if you hear 3 people ask you the same question, I guarantee there are 1,000 others who have that question too. Maybe they just haven't said anything to you, or maybe they don't even know you exist. But they're going on Google and they're typing in that question. And guess what? If you've created something that answers that question, now they become part of your audience.
I agree. Now you were lucky, right? 2006, you jumped on YouTube, pretty much took a risk on this new platform. What I like to say is you had first user's advantage, right?
Yes.
You created your website shortly after. You were building your personal brand before it was known as a personal brand. So with all of the social media nowadays, how can people get their name out there? But more importantly, how do you even know that you're a personal brand?
Well, the number one thing I would say about a personal brand, I was actually thinking about this yesterday and this morning, a live stream I did this morning, is that I was reading this article about Uber drivers and how when Uber drivers have to go to the bathroom is really a challenge, because the way the platform is set up is so competitive amongst the drivers. If you log out and say, I'm unavailable to take rides, and then you go take care of your needs, someone else is taking your rides, and you might lose a significant amount of money for that driver because you can't stop driving. And I thought about that while I was reading the article. I thought to myself, you know what the real challenge is for Uber drivers is not that they can't go to the bathroom. The challenge is that they're commodities. Meaning, if I'm an Uber driver today and I decide to quit Uber, I'm like, no, forget Uber. I'm never doing Uber again. Uber's not stopping, because somebody else is going to come in and they're going to start Uber driving today, and they won't even notice that I quit. A commodity is something that is easily replaceable. It doesn't really matter which one I get as long as I get one. Let's say, for example, some bottled water or some napkins or some paper towels. Maybe you have your preference in brands, but does it really, really matter? It really doesn't. As long as you get one, you get it. Those are commodities. So a brand, if you want to be a personal brand, anyone listening to this, there has to be something that you bring to the table that if you stop bringing it to the table, it no longer exists. That if you're not there, let's just say if I'm putting videos on YouTube of me practicing basketball, this doesn't apply today because there are 1,000 people doing basketball on YouTube now. But let's say in 2009, if I decided to not put out a video for a week, I'll be getting a ton of emails of people saying, hey, Dre, when are you going to put out another drill? Because there's nowhere else to get it. So there has to be something that you bring to the table. And it doesn't have to be a certain type of product or a certain piece of content. It could be your personality. It could just be the way that you deliver things. Let's say someone like Kevin Hart. He's not the first comedian in history, but nobody delivers the way that he delivers. So if he's not doing comedy, people are like, man, I want to hear Kevin Hart's comedy. I like Seinfeld's good. Louis C.K. is good, but I want to hear Kevin Hart. Is a certain way that he does it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this brand new thing that never existed before. Like, for example, putting basketball on YouTube. But if you're doing it in a way that it hasn't been done, you could even take somebody like Drake. He wasn't the first rapper of all time, but he brought it in a style. He wasn't the first rapper who also sung. We had Ja Rule, but he brought it in a way. He brought it in a way that nobody had heard it before. So that's what made him stand out as a brand. He became the thing that people wanted. People said, okay, we want exactly what this guy's bringing to the table. So you have to ask yourself, and actually there's a guy named James Altucher who has a podcast. Really good stuff James does as a writer as well. And he talks about, since there's so much, that question that you asked, Michelle, a lot of people ask that question because there's so much stuff out right now and so many people out there and it's so crowded. How do you stand out? He said, it doesn't even have to be one thing, because if you look at my situation, did I invent basketball? No, there was plenty of basketball players before me. Was I even the best basketball player? No, you had Kobe Bryant, you had Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson, Michael Jordan. Most people in the world know those names and don't know my name. So I didn't invent basketball. I did not invent the internet. I didn't invent putting videos out. But the combination of all three, that intersection of playing basketball, putting it on video, and putting it on the internet for free, never existed before I did it. So I'm saying that to say this is the intersection of things that can make you stand out. It doesn't have to be the thing, because if someone wants to start a podcast, you won't be the first podcaster. You won't be the first woman podcaster or the first male or the first one talking business or whatever topic, but you can come up with an intersection that really, I guess the phrase will be, niched down into that one thing that makes you stand out, that people say, okay, when I want this is what I get. I use Twitter as an example. The Twitter was not the first place you could, because Twitter is actually blogging. That's what it was first put out, as a blog, but it's only 140 characters. But if you wanted to blog, you can go to WordPress, you can go to Blogger, you can go to Facebook. But if you wanted to get on the internet, you could go to anywhere online. But what's the only place on the internet where you can publish something that is limited to 140 characters? The answer is Twitter. So that became their brand. So you had to figure out for yourself, what is the intersection that I own? And once you figure that out, all you have to do is put out enough content of quality that's answering things that people want, that when someone says, if I want this plus this plus this, where do I go? And the answer is only one answer, and the answer is you. That's what makes you stand out. That's what makes your brand.
I love it. What is the intersection I own? I love it.
Yes.
Powerful statement. All right. Just before we wrap up, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on every social media platform. I'm most active right now on Snapchat. My Snapchat is at Dre Baldwin, first name, last name. For those who aren't on Snapchat, I'm on Twitter at Dre All Day. And my website is dreallday.com. And any platform you're on other than those that you prefer, just look on it, go on it, and just type my name in, Dre Baldwin, and I'm on there. So I'm on every platform you can find me, or just Google me, because I'm everywhere on the internet.
All right, Dre, well, I definitely want to acknowledge you just for having a powerful story. And one thing that struck out to me the most, especially on your About page, you have a couple of quotes on here. But you said, I made the pros and created a platform for all of those who won't. And I know in my late 20s, I came across, a lot of basketball players. They played in, high school, college, like you said, from the age of 7 up. But they weren't able to make that dream. And, in your mid to late 20s, you get kind of stuck. and not knowing what to do. But what I love about your quote and everything that you're doing is like you're showing not just athletes, but entrepreneurs, other people on how to make a way, how to stay disciplined, focused, motivated, and make a way. And I just appreciate you for your message and for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And the final question, how do you define success?
I define success. Well, I would have to steal a quote from Earl Nightingale because I was listening to him actually this morning. And he said, success is the pursuit of a worthy ideal, which means you know what it is you want to have, who you want to be, what you want to achieve, what you want to do. And you are in the process of doing the things necessary to get yourself to that point. So success is not that you have achieved or that you did do, but that you are actually doing it in the moment. And I heard Tex Winter, the guy who was the assistant coach for the Chicago Bulls during Michael Jordan's days, he said, you are only successful in the moment that you are going after the success, because as soon as they hand you the trophy, the success is over. You already did it. You got acknowledged for it. Now what? So you're only a success when you're doing the work.
Wow. You're only a success when you're doing the work. We got to keep doing the work.
Absolutely.
Got to keep doing work. Well, once again, Dre, thank you for being on the show. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you visit Dre at his website at dreallday.com. Remember, I believe in you, and a personal connection leads to an influential network. Thanks for networking with Michelle.